Sunrise on the Reaping, the latest iteration of the Hunger Games series, has released and covers the tragic tale of Haymitch Abernathy in the 50th annual Hunger Games. This book takes a unique spin on the originals with the choice to show how the Hunger Games is used as a means of propaganda, as it being a necessary evil. Today, we're going to talk about the themes, vibes, and what we liked about the book, without spoilers, of course.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be doing a no spoilers review of Sunrise on the Reaping.
So we can start with the vibes if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So the vibe of this book is a lot more similar to the original Hunger Games book rather than A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but the main characters think very differently.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think that Haymitch is a lot more impulsive than Katniss, even though Katniss can be impulsive. But maybe Haymitch is less lucky.
Yeah, I definitely think that luck has a lot to do with it. Because Haymitch is definitely impulsive. Like, during the chariot arrival, he does something that, if planned out, you would do it a lot better. So I think that he is just as impulsive as Katniss is, but he's a lot less lucky.
In the book, they make a point of him being a little bit of a rascal. He's definitely a little bit of a live wire, you could say. And I feel like he doesn't have that same filter of what to say that Katniss does. Like, whenever you're reading the books, she often thinks these things but never says it. Haymitch just says it.
Yeah, it's like that feeling whenever you just blurt something out and it's like, why did I just say that? That was an inside thought.
Yeah. And on top of that, I definitely feel like the theme of luck kind of plays a role, that they kind of need somebody luckier.
Yeah, and that's explicitly obvious, and you know that going into it because you know from the original trilogy what happens to Haymitch's family.
But as for his personality, I would kind of put it that to similar of like a Percy Jackson, to where he's willing to say whatever, he kind of gets himself into trouble. He is a little bit of a rascal. He doesn't often do what's in his best interest.
Yeah, it's definitely more about making a statement for Haymitch rather than his own survival, honestly, which is completely opposite of what Katniss is.
Yeah, that was a point that I was wanting to bring up, that in the original books, it is really focused on survival, whether it's Katniss trying to survive herself or to keep Peeta alive or whatever it is, but she's not really concerned about how the functioning of the games goes on around her or the different individuals or anything. And that's completely different in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's in the nature of the theme of the book, with like it kind of being surrounded around propaganda, is that she wanted to make a point that he is seeing the bits of the Hunger Games that the viewers don't.
Yeah, and I feel like they don't even begin to bring that up until the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy.
It already kind of just brought up themes of it, and if you don't know, Suzanne Collins beforehand said that the themes of the book are going to be around propaganda and a totalitarian oligarchy, so really Orwellian type of concepts, if you know, like 1984 or Animal Farm. And that intention of hers really rings true through the way that the book is written.
She also says that she never writes anything unless she has something explicit to say.
And those ideas definitely come up a lot.
Yeah, she's very clear with what she's trying to say in this book.
And kind of to that point that she did use this book as a means to be able to cover those themes, we covered this in a previous video of ours about the nature of the reaping, that we obviously know that it is a means of oppression over the districts. This book went in with the intention of making it abundantly clear that it's also a form of propaganda for the capital and the districts, as well as a form of oppression.
Yeah, and I feel like with the original trilogy, it was more about the systemic oppression of the people and about how like it systemically oppresses the poor more than the moderately well off. But I feel like this book, it shows that they don't only target their subjects, but they particularly target those who come out against them.
And I think that the Hunger Games has always kind of meant the same thing as it is in this book, but she just makes a point to really make it clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also, in this book, she used the first person limited, which is different from The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So it really puts you in that point of view of Haymitch, who is this random district occupant, and it really just puts you in that point of view of just somebody who is absorbing all of this propaganda and knows something is off.
And that's kind of to my point earlier that Haymitch is really paying a lot more attention at what's going on in the Hunger Games rather than Katniss was really just hyper-focused on how she can set herself up to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So, of the things that we did like, I will start that this is obviously a story that the fan base has been asking for years, is just the backstory of Haymitch. Like, what happened to his family, how he played a role in the revolution, and how his family came to be what we know.
Yeah, and what comes with that also comes with the character of Haymitch before he became a drunk, which I have a soft spot for because he's a boy in love, you know. Who doesn't love that trope?
Yeah, I definitely like that part about it with the nature of his personality, where you can definitely see how he was in the book. Definitely translates to how he was later in the series. I think at the very least, that was interesting.
Yeah, and it definitely gives a new meaning behind his usage of the word sweetheart for him.
Yeah, definitely adds a new layer to what we know about him.
And it's just layer upon layer upon layer. Because it's like, oh, that's why he does that. Or like, oh, that's why that character comes back.
I feel like it's going to change the perspective of Catching Fire.
Most definitely. Like, while this will change our point of view of Haymitch in the original Hunger Game book, it's going to completely switch up your point of view for Catching Fire. Because that's when the real rebellion begins.
This is going to have some ties in there that it creates. And I think that it's going to make like Catching Fire and Mockingjay make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, because during Catching Fire, there's people in her alliance where you're just like, why did they agree to the alliance? And then it's like, oh, figured that out now.
I agree, and it definitely makes the districts feel more connected than they do in the original ones.
So let's move on to the things that we did not like, which you hate to talk about for a book that you've been looking forward to for, what, years? You know what I mean?
Like, we were really looking forward to this, but it was not a perfect piece of literature.
In fact, I would say that it's probably not the top of even Suzanne Collins' pieces of literature. But the first thing that we did not like was symbolism. That was obviously going to be a huge part of this. We thought it was very heavy-handed.
There are these assumptions that you can have in the original trilogy that this book just says explicitly. And sometimes I'm like, man, did you really need to tell us that explicitly? I feel like Suzanne Collins should understand that at this point, the majority of her audience is going to be adults that read the books whenever they were younger. And she didn't really write to that audience, I don't feel.
She should have kept in mind that most of the people reading it would have been adults who read it when they were younger. I mean, I read The Hunger Games when I was in 5th grade. You know what I mean? Like, you grow up from there. But I feel like the maturity of this piece of literature was a step down than the original Hunger Games book.
100%. And similarly, I feel like a lot of the characters made outright stupid decisions just to further the plot.
Ooh, I hate that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, they would start doing something and you're just like, no rational human being would just do that.
I totally agree.
There was parts of this book that we liked a lot and parts that we did not. Overall, if you wanted more Hunger Games content and are curious about the tragedy that is Haymitch Abernathy's life, it's a must-read. But as a standalone book, it is probably worth skipping. While we may not have liked this book, like, it's not a classic novel that, like, everyone must read. It is a fun read, and if you wanted to read it, don't let us rain on your parade. Like, go read it. Rate it on Goodreads yourself and experience it.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I was kind of expecting too much. Like, she was talking it up about that it's going to have all these Orwellian concepts, so I was really hoping something on the level of that was going to be seriously unique, but it felt like it was just like a twist on the previous Hunger Games, but with some heavy-handed symbolism. But overall, if you really just kind of want like a Hunger Games story that's similar to the originals, but with Haymitch instead of Katniss, yeah, go for it. Read it. It's fun, but it's just not the best piece of literature in the world.
And on that note, please give us a like, hit us with a subscribe, maybe give us a comment, and I think that's all we have for today. So, see ya!
Bye.